Great day, everyone. This is Jason Santos, and for today, we will continue the discussion of practical research. We are already on Module 3, and I have decided to cut it down in several parts because this module is actually one of the longest in the entire practical research 2 module. So, para mas maintindihan ninyo, minabuti ko na mag-focus lang on several parts, which I will explain further later. So watch out for the succeeding videos, the part 2, 3, or 4. Maybe let's see if we can congest those on single videos. No? But for this one, I'll just be focusing on conceptual framework and theoretical framework. So mandatory introduction lang. Just for those who are watching this for the first time, here are some of my accomplishments in the field of research, and you can also check my research playlist here in my YouTube channel, so you can review my past work. Okay, and rest assured that everything that we are discussing here are based on the most essential learning competencies or MELCs. Okay? So may basis naman tayo dito, no? And again, for module 3, we will just be covering research framework, okay? Number 1, because again, this is a long module, and in order for us to understand things further, para rin hindi ako ma-exhaust explaining everything in just one sitting. I have decided to focus on research framework for this topic and discuss the remaining on my succeeding videos. So, before we go further, if you want, you can actually check your previous learnings through this pre-test. You can answer this. No, you can pause the video, answer it on your own, and then if you would like to validate your answers, whether they are correct, feel free to message me on all of my social media platforms. Okay, and I'll be willing to share with you the right answers to this pre-test. Okay, so for research framework, first off, what I would like to discuss here is that when you talk of research framework, this is similar to a foundation or siguro sa Tagalog we can say skeleton or pundasyon. Whenever I talk to students, I tell them na if you would think of a house or a building, okay, kung mahina yung foundation ng building or ng structure, it would fall down. Or if a human has brittle bones, hindi matibay yung kanyang mga buto. No, it wouldn't support the body weight of the person. So similarly sa isang research, no, it's very important that you have a really structured, well-planned research framework. So a research framework illustrates the structure, the blueprint, the research plan, and helps the researcher formulate relevant research questions. So if you have the structure and blueprint well created, hindi ka mahirapang magsulat, no? Or you won't be having a hard time creating research questions, no? Normally, the framework would consist, key concepts and other things that would guide you in creating the study. It could be in the form of a visual, a diagram, a chart. It could be narrated, a paragraph, and then several objects showing the relationship of the study, so on and so forth. So basically, pag research framework ang pinag-uusapan natin, you have all of these things ready. No, yung iyong theoretical framework, yung conceptual framework, yung statement of the problem or yung questions. And then all of those things the need for you to research. No? In fact, whenever I do reviews of research, no, pag yung mga bata nagsasubmit sa akin, whether I am their advisor or nagpapanel ako, I'm asking for the three core things. No? Kasi yun yung research framework eh. Now, if that wasn't properly prepared, we will have problems later on with the research. Now, when you talk of theoretical and conceptual framework, there is a difference between the two. And let's try to read first what is the definition. Ano? The types of frameworks are classified as the theoretical and conceptual framework. A theoretical framework is commonly used for studies that anchor on time tested theories that relate the findings of the investigation to the underpinning relevant theory of knowledge. So when you have a research, kailangan naka-anchor or it is based upon time tested theories. So you have theories that was experts in certain fields. Okay. For example, you have a study about leadership or you have a study, pwede mong gamitin dyan yung gasgas na um, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, no? That is a theory by Maslow, no? And that's just among the hundreds or even thousands of theories out there in their respective fields and continuously being added in the pool of knowledge. Okay? So yun yung theoretical framework natin. And then for the conceptual framework, it refers to the actual ideas, beliefs, and tentative theories that specifically supports the study. It is primarily a conception or model. So meron kang model, you have an illustration of what is out there that the research plans to study. So mamaya makikita ninyo how the conceptual framework looks like. The model is a good example of how you would define a conceptual framework. So sometimes, no, kaya napagkakamalian siya ng mga students, it's because there are similarities between theoretical and conceptual framework. Minsan, nai-interchange nila yan. And okay lang naman yun, ano? Understandable yun. And it is those things, no? And ano ba yung mga similarities na yun? Okay? Um, they provide an overall view of the research study. So, yung pareho, theoretical and conceptual, overall view, kumbaga big picture view, no, of the research study. So pag tiningnan mo pa lang yung theoretical at saka conceptual, alam mo na kaagad na, okay, so you're studying about leadership or you're studying about poverty. Paano mo nasabi yun? Just by looking at the theories. Ano ba yung mga theories na naka-inject dun sa research? No? Paano ba yung design ng kanyang conceptual framework? Okay? So number two, anchor a theory that supports the study. So yan ano, kasi pareho yan sila nagsiserve as support eh. Kaya yung study mo naka-anchor sa dalawang bagay na to. No? Guide in developing relevant research questions and objectives. So totoo yan. Ano? It serves as the guide na establish na natin yan kanina. Helps justify assumptions. Yan yung nabanggit ko. No? Or hypothesis. It aids in choosing the appropriate methodology. So it's in chapter 3, no, the research methodology. So it is anchored again on your theoretical and conceptual framework. Gathering and interpreting the data and guide in identifying possible threats to validity. So here are the similarities ano, in the theoretical and framework. Although more, there are differences. Okay? Kasi nga magkaiba siya eh. No? Hindi siya iisa. So, ano ba yung scope ng theoretical framework? Mas malawak yan, ano? It is broader because you can get theories as older as uh, possible, no? Kung ano man yung mga lumang theories, pwede mong gamitin. Pwede ka rin gumamit ng bago. So, the scope is really broad. Pwede kang humanap ng theories abroad or local. It depends, okay? And can be used in different studies. So, whether the study is a scientific study, it is an IT related study, it is a business study, pwede silang gumamit ng iisang theory, eh, right? So, pwede siyang mag-overlap ng disciplines, ano? Pwede siyang magamit sa iba't ibang discipline. Whereas for the conceptual framework, mas narrow and focused na siya, hindi siya broad. Okay, later on makikita ninyo, no? And directly related to specific study. So ano ba yung focus ng theoretical framework? The particular theory used already in the field. So magbe-base siya sa mga theories. And then the conceptual framework, the focus is set of related concepts to a specific study. So nakikita ninyo, no? Mas specific talaga when you talk of the conceptual framework. Number of theories presents one theory at a time. So sa kanila, it's always better to have kumbaga kung mas sumobra siya versus konti, no? The problem is you relied in just one theory and then you found out that there are issues with the theory or insufficient yung theory, no? So it's always better to have more versus having less, no, when it comes to these things. So you will present them one at a time when you are already in the defense end as well as in the manuscript. Pag sinabi mo naman conceptual framework, no, the presentation is a synthesis, it is a summary. It's targeting a specific area. And then time of development, already existing before the conduct of the study. No, so yung theories mo, again, pwedeng panahon pa ng lolo at lola mo yan, hindi ka pa pinanganganak, no, nag-exist na yung theory na yan. Before you have even thought of doing the study. And then a conceptual framework, you do it while you are writing the specific research. Hindi siya pwedeng lumang conceptual framework na inadapt mo. No, it doesn't work that way. It has to always be crafted in the present. So yun yung mga differences between the two. Now, one of the common questions of the students is, saan ba ako maghanap ng theories? No? It is always recommended that you read books, no? Yung mga books that are related to your field of study. Okay, so in the past, nung hindi pa gaano malaganap yung internet, no, we go to libraries, we look for journals, newspapers, articles, etc. But thanks to modern technology ngayon, you can easily look for theories and even yung mga literature for your RRL online. No? And one of the most powerful tools that you can use is Google Scholar. So Google Scholar, you will just put in what theories you would want to look at. No, let's say, naglagay ako dyan, theory about education or theory in education. And it will give me several results. Okay, so ayan, theory on education. Let's say yun yung study ko. No? Let's say student, gusto mo maghanap ng mga theories that supports your study. You can look for theory on education and then you would just have to click the PDF or the link. No, just need to be patient because sometimes there are manuscripts there that are no longer so kailangan mo talagang maghanap. Okay? And ganun talaga sa research eh. You have to expect that you will spend a lot of time reading things. Hindi pa pwedeng hindi ka nagbabasa, no? And you will expect na matatapos mo yung research mo. All right? So very important 'yan, ano. So check out Google Scholar of you can look for the theories that you need there. Now next we have this concept map. Okay. First and foremost, ano, let me clarify this. The concept map is not included in the manuscript, no? Kasama dun sa chapters 1 to 5 na pinapasa ninyo sa professor ninyo or teacher ninyo as your final output. Okay? Is a visual representation of information that helps show the relationship between ideas And a concept map begins with the main topic and then branch out into subtopics. If you would recall my discussion last time about the pyramid, no, you can narrow down as if you have a funnel, no, inverted pyramid. You are narrowing down topics like drug abuse, no. Ninarrow down natin siya dun sa previous discussion natin, eh, no. So dito sa concept map, it works the same way. Let's say meron kang you want to do a research about climate change. Napakalawak niyan, ano? So the concept map will help you understand where you are and what data do you have at present. So you talk of climate change, what are the evidences available, ano ba yung mga solution, the evidence, mananarrow down mo pa siya, yung solutions, mananarrow down mo pa rin siya, yung causes, na you can also narrow down, ano. So parang if you are watching a movie, no, makikita niyo 'di ba yung detective nasa bahay siya tapos yung meron siyang general concept, yun yung nasa gitna tapos kino-connect niya yun, no, with either a pen o di kaya meron siyang tali, no, tapos yung pins kino-connect-connect niya yung mga para mas makita niya clearly, okay. Kasi sa totoo lang, ano, ito basic human nature 'to, eh, mas madali kasing mag-isip kapag sa isip mo lang siya, okay. 'Pag nasa isip mo lang siya may tendency pang makalimutan mo 'yon ano o di kaya malito ka na kasi ang dami mong iniisip. But if you have prepared your own concept map 'no, parang or online, puwede mo siyang balik-balikan anytime and kumbaga ano siya, eh, it is subject to change ano, puwede mo siyang dagdagan ng elements ano, may natuklasan kang bago after reading a couple of, researches. Ay meron pala ako mo siya maidadagdag ano. So yun yung beauty of having your own concept map. Okay? You start broad and then you go to the subtopics which makes it more specific. Kasi nga sa conceptual framework, you need to be very specific. Okay? So the concept map are very useful for researchers and readers to understand better visually. So totoo naman yan, ano, marami sa atin are visual. Kaya nga tayo, if you would look at the psychology of a person, ano, maraming sa mga tao ngayon are stuck with their phones, ano, all day watching movies, watching TikTok, scrolling through Facebook kasi visual people tayo, visual things tayo. No? We love to see things. So ganun din, ano, if you're doing research, it's always much better if you have your own concept maps so you can understand the links, properly see the connections, ano, understand where you are already at when you are doing your research. Again, this is not included in the manuscript. Ano, this is for you para mas maintindihan mo yung ginagawa mong research. Alright? So, that's for the concept map. And then when kanina na na-establish na natin yung the idea of the concept map and then you need the theory and conceptual framework as they serve as the skeleton and the blueprint of your study. So kapag gagawa ka na ngayon ng conceptual framework mo, no, you need to take note of the following variables. No, may mga elements kasi siya. Okay? And itong mga elements na 'to, ito yung ilalagay natin later on sa ating conceptual framework. Okay? So, first, let's read the definitions and then mamaya makikita ninyo saan ba siya nilalagay. So, we have the independent variable, which is the presumed cause or of the research problem, and it is the reason for any change or difference in the dependent variable. So, una, isipin nyo lang muna, independent from the term itself. It can stand by itself, no? Unmovable, unchangeable, no? May sarili siyang persona, no? The independent variable. And then opposite to that, you have the dependent variable. From the term itself, dependent, the presumed effect. Usually the problem itself of the element that is being questioned. So yung dependent variable, nakadepende from the term.
Variable is an independent variable which influences the direction and the strength of the connection between independent and dependent variables, while the mediating variables or intervening variable is an element that exists between the independent to the dependent variable. So later on, I will show you the placements, okay, of the moderating and the mediating variable together with the independent and dependent variable. So yan. You have the independent variable which is unchangeable. From the term itself, it's independent. And then the product or the output would be to the dependent variable. And then in between, you have the moderating variables and in the control variables that influences, okay, the outcome of the dependent variable. Here's an example of an independent versus a dependent variable, ano, para hindi kayo malito. So, here we have the fertilizer or application of fertilizer as a variable X or the independent variable. Ano? Kasi regardless of whether you will use the fertilizer or the water, there will be no effect ano in the research kasi the research is effects of biofertilizer X on the plant growth. So yung fertilizer or biofertilizer or water, that's the um, independent variable ano. Hindi siya unchanged yan, hindi magagalaw yan. No? Whether mag-add ka ng variables in the study or no. While the plant, no, yung plant growth, yung number of leaves, whether mamumunga ba siya, yun yung dependent variable, ano? Kasi we are trying to understand if pag dinagdagan ba natin yung fertilizer or binawasan, maapektuhan din yung kanyang growth, mas lalago ba siya, or magbubunga ba siya or hindi. Alright, so yun yung mga examples ng independent and dependent variable. Now we go to the input process output model or the IPO. It is a conceptual paradigm which indicates the inputs, required processes, and the output. And this approach is seated on the premise of acquiring essential information by converting inputs into outputs through the required processing steps in obtaining the result. The IPO model is also referred to as a functional model that is actually used in action research where an intervention or solution is necessary to solve the identified problem. And then the input is usually the independent variable of the study. Meanwhile, the process is the intervention or solution, consisting of the instruments and analysis used to acquire the result. And lastly, the output is the findings or outcome, the interventions being made to solve the identified problem. So ito yung bukod sa IVDV, itong IPO model is yung pinakang common framework na ginagamit in researches. So IVDV, ayan, you have the independent variable, let's say hours of study, and then dependent variable would be academic performance. Of course, yung hours of study, independent variable yan eh. Whether baguhin mo yan or hindi, it would stay the same. While the academic performance, yun yung dependent variable. Mas naging mataas ba yung grades mo nung mas mahaba yung hours of study mo, or mas bumaba ba yung academic performance mo nung binawasan mo yung hours of study. So yan yung IEVDV. While for input process output, ito this is a good example, ano. So input, ano ba yung mga ilalagay natin? You have the demographic profile, which is the age, sex, the marital status, and then food safety profile, like yung knowledge at attitudes and practices. And then what process will you be doing? So the process will be one, you will profile your respondents. Two, you will conduct the survey questionnaire. Three, you would analyze the data. And then your output, no, IPO model to eh. Ang output mo or what you expect or intend to have is a proposed intervention program. So, yun yung ina-expect mo maging output ng research mo. Makakagawa ka ng proposed intervention program. Okay? Now, this conceptual framework niyan shows the input, process, and output approach of the study. Okay? And then, if we would relate this to IVDV, ano bang yung kanyang relevance, no? Yung input mo, yun yung independent variable. Okay? It includes socio-demographic and food safety profile. And then the process includes the tools and analysis and gathering the data. While the output is the outcome based, no? So yung output mo, yan naman yung magiging dependent variable mo, no? Kasi dependent yan whether you will be successful in gathering the inputs and then processing them. So for an activity, this is something that you can do. Uh, you can create an IVDV conceptual paradigm or even an IPO with the elements and factors presented herein. Yan yung 1 to 7. You can try creating those. You can show that to me if you want to just send me a message on my socials, and then I'll check for you if you have done it correctly. So that's it. Ano? Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something. And for more videos like this, go ahead and check out my playlists, particularly in research and senior high school modules. And as promised, I will be releasing a second part of the module 3 video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next video. Stay safe and God bless.